was right here. It started, there was stuff right in this field right here.
This is the deadliest act of mass murder in Colorado history.
And the loud blast that shook all the windows, we thought some of the windows were even coming in, and we jumped up, ran outside. The ball of fire was coming through the sky and the motors were wild, revved up. You knew it was an airplane.
It wasn't just a plane crash, it was a bombing of a plane.
John Gilbert Graham, you remember him, planted a time bomb in the suitcase carried by his mother on a United airliner.
This is a picture of all 44 who were killed. I wanted to make my dad's life count, to know that he didn't die in vain. See, my dad was killed on United Flight 629 that blew up within 11 minutes of takeoff from Stapleton Airport over beet fields in Weld County.
There was already debris on the road, so we drove the truck around each body so that it could be found easily.
And finding a body was really fairly simple, but later on to try to pick that body up and put it in a body bag, that was the tough part.
Nothing has ever been done for the passengers who lost their lives, and nothing has been done for the families whose lives were totally shattered by what happened November 1st, 1955.
But it matters because these people need healing, and we don't want this generation to pass away without seeing the results of what they did that night by going out, and many were traumatized by the events that they saw.
So this memorial is very important. It's not just about me, my dad. It's about 43 other families that were involved, and about the history and legacy of Weld County. That's what this is about.
It was here in Weld County over 69 years ago when eyewitnesses and first responders saw in the beet fields so horrific, so senseless, that for many, the only way forward was to bury their emotions and do the impossible job of recovering victims, some of whom fell from the sky still strapped in their seats. In the first ever plane bombing over U.S. soil, United Flight 629, a state-of-the-art airliner in 1955, loaded with 44 people and their luggage, including one bag packed with 25 sticks of dynamite, planted by a Denver man who wanted to murder his own mother to collect life insurance money. This was the true cost: mothers, grandmothers, children, all collateral damage in his evil plan. But this is not about him. It's about understanding why this Colorado tragedy has largely been forgotten, how it changed aviation forever, and the growing movement to come together and do something that's never been done, to finally build a permanent, lasting memorial so Coloradans can learn about what happened, where first responders and citizen heroes can reflect and heal, where the families of the 44 have a place to connect to their loved ones. And in this moment, you have a unique opportunity to be a part of helping to be sure the victims of the United Flight 629 tragedy will be remembered. Throughout this program, you'll see this QR code and a link to Denver 7 Gives if you'd like to honor the victims by donating to the future memorial. But first, let's meet the Coloradans working hard to bring this memorial to life ahead of the 70th commemoration.
So I asked Conrad, ask the person that walked out on the field when that happened. Why do you think it's not been remembered or noted?
Becky Tassone, Vice President of the Flight 629 Memorial Committee, is talking about Conrad Hopp.
It was right here. It started, there was stuff right in this field right here.
Who, along with his wife, Martha, just teens back then, heard the DC-6 explode, jumped up from the supper table and out into the Weld County beet fields.
The ball of fire was coming through the sky and the motors were wild, revved up.
We drove the truck around each body so that it could be found easily.
So people are surprised by it. They're surprised there's no memorial.
Mike Hess, president of the Denver Police Museum, along with Tassone, and each in their own way are working to bring more awareness to the Flight 629 story.
I've always been interested in Colorado history, but it really didn't ring home to me until I saw the parts of the plane.
The force of the explosion, I think, really comes through when you look at this.
A critical piece of FBI evidence, a dark moment in our state's history, preserved behind this glass at History, Colorado.
The first case of sabotage against a commercial airliner in the United States.
A crumpled part of the DC-6's cargo hold, key evidence in the trial against John Gilbert Graham.
Planted a time bomb in the suitcase carried by his mother on a United airliner.
And just a few minutes after the DC-6 climbed northwest out of Denver.
Between Firestone and Longmont, it exploded. Debris rained down across the farm fields that were there. All 44 passengers and crew on board were killed. And it was a tragedy that people had not been prepared to deal with. The scope was something that they hadn't seen before.
In spite of the fact that the plane exploded in midair, most of the luggage was still pretty well intact, except for one bag.
That badly damaged bag, belonging to a Denver woman, Daisy King, would crack the case, leading the FBI straight to her son, John Gilbert Graham, who walked up to a vending machine at Stapleton Airport, bought a trip insurance policy of $37,000 in his mother's name, and named himself the beneficiary.
This is the first court trial ever televised in the state of Colorado. The dark-haired boy with the crew cut is John Gilbert Graham.
Just the solid police work that went into that one bag obviously led them down a path, ultimately allowed them to solve this.
It didn't take long to understand. There was no survivors.
This past November 1st marks 69 years, and for the first time, the community gathered at Firestone at sunset to mark the moment.
John W. Jungle.
Now, momentum is building to next November, and a milestone, 70 years, with two efforts underway to build a lasting tribute, one in Weld County, the other where Flight 629's final journey began.
So this is the last remaining portion of the Denver Stapleton Airport, the tower here. Obviously, this is where the plane took off en route to Portland on November 1st, 1955.
Patrons at Flyco will have a chance to learn about this major piece of aviation history.
So we've talked about potentially here or here as the location, and the memorial will be in the shape of an airplane fuselage, and it will be pointed northwest, which is the direction that the plane took off from the airport.
The Denver Police Museum is creating challenge coins to fundraise for the permanent 629 memorial at Flyco in Denver. History Colorado is planning a special exhibit next November so Coloradans can reflect and learn. As Tassone and the Flight 629 Memorial Committee are hard at work for this year and next, building a vision for a main Flight 629 memorial in Weld County, a permanent tribute where the tragedy happened that cold November night.
They have never had a monument, and they have never had their names read or candles lit for them. And so we want to do that to break open what's going to happen a year from November 1st, which is the 70th anniversary.
The design details are coming together, as is the site of the future memorial.
One side will have the names on it. Two sides will have places that were all connected,
telling the story of how different Colorado communities responded. Another side of the memorial will tell the stories of the first responders.
So we hope to have benches on all four sides of the memorial, and we want to have it covered, which will cost money. We don't know what that will be yet. And we're going to have a 2-by-4 foot plane made out of bronze on top of it.
They just hope, as more Coloradans learn about what happened, someone out there will be moved to open their heart.
Colorado needs to awaken to what happened in 1955. Getting the word out has been our hardest challenge.
So that next November, which will mark 70 years, families of the victims, many who have never been to Colorado, will be welcomed to a forever place to connect with their loved one.
I know there's people out there that can write a check for the whole thing. I know there's people out there that can give us $5, $10, and all of it matters. All of it matters. Because what they put their money into is what they are a part of in their heart. And this is something that the heart needs healing in for these people.
To make important progress on the future memorial, there is a big need ahead of the 70th commemoration. The Flight 629 committee hopes to raise around $30,000 for a down payment and will need thousands more to lay the foundation. Denver 7 Gives is stepping up to launch a campaign to help them get there. If you'd like to donate, just snap a photo of this QR code, which will take you directly to a secure link to donate. Or you can go to denver7.com/flight629. A common criticism in the aftermath of tragedies like United Flight 629 is an inherent focus on the suspect and their crimes. Sometimes the stories of the victims can get lost over time. That's a message from Marion Poppelmeyer, who lost her father. We met up with her on one of her very first trips to those Weld County beet fields, the place where her father died. How she found healing with a message of hope for anyone struggling with trauma and forgiveness, coming up next. I'm Denver 7's Jeff Anastasio here in Weld County. The pain of what happened here has been felt through generations across the country, especially for the families of loved ones who were on board United Flight 629.
Someone somewhere found my dad, because my dad was a passenger on that flight. He was 31 years old.
Marion Poppelmeyer knows that deep pain of loss better than most. Losing a father she never even had the chance to meet, to touch, to hug.
It just floors me, the massive destruction that was here on this field.
But her journey to healing and forgiveness is an inspiration for anyone who has suffered trauma. A message of hope she penned in this very personal memoir about the tragedy. A message she shared with us on one of her very first visits to Colorado.
I wanted to make my dad's life count, to know that he didn't die in vain.
In just seconds, forever robbed of the chance to know him.
I wasn't born yet. My mother was 6 months pregnant with me, and I came prematurely due to her distress, her trauma.
Her physical connection to Dad limited to a few things left behind.
My dad's cufflinks still have the FBI tags on them. I just felt I had a bit of my dad with me. Huge thing, I just cherish these, his watch he wore. And I'm thanking God that he was not looted.
Marion isn't sure who found her father that night.
But someone found him, covered him, and then stayed by him to make sure that looters, because looters were coming on board to loot the bodies, and it was just a huge mayhem that went on in that field that night.
But fate has taken her here, to the living room of Martha and Conrad Hopp, both of whom in 1955 responded to the scene, but there was no one to rescue.
But I don't think that I probably went to bed for 2 days, because we were busy even the next day, still looking for bodies. We didn't find them all that night.
Marion, who lives out of state, had never traveled to Colorado to these beet fields where her father died.
But coming here, I knew that, from talking with Conrad, that it has been a traumatizing event for him in his life.
Coming here has helped me.
Wow.
I really do. Because I can talk better today than I could the other day, if you notice. See that little hump in the field out there, just in front of us? About from there to where the motors went into the ground is where all the bodies were.
Healing through her own trauma, overcoming the pain of loss. Her faith led her here.
I didn't even want to imagine him on that beet fields, to be honest. So I don't go there when I'm out there.
A pursuit of truth and connection to her dad ultimately took Marion to another unexpected place.
And I didn't want to. I'm being real honest and real. But I knew I couldn't be totally free until I forgave the man who killed my dad.
A decades-long journey of healing. She hopes she can speak to others, no matter their pain.
It lifted a burden that I was carrying all these years. It lifted the bitterness, the anger, the hatred. It totally changed me.
In your imagination, maybe you think about what your conversation would go like.
I think I would hug him and cry. If he were to walk through the door right, I would be in tears, crying and just letting him hold me. That would be it. I'm just now thinking that Dad, I'll be back. And I know he's not here. So symbolic that I'll be back.
Marion has more trips to Colorado planned as the 70th commemoration approaches. Her book, Finding My Father Beyond Tragedy, Through Trauma and Into Freedom, can be found on Amazon.
I can remember that night as though it were last week.
Coming up next, I'll share eyewitness accounts not heard in 40 years.
And he said to me, "Mom, I hope I never see anything like this again."
As an effort is underway to capture the living history and recollections of the horrors that happened on November 1st, 1955. As Denver 7 Gives presents the United Flight 629 tragedy, a push to build a permanent memorial. You can scan this QR code if you'd like to donate. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Denver 7's Jeff Anastasio. When trying to understand why so few Coloradans know of Flight 629 or why a memorial to remember the victims was never built, it might help to go back in time and consider what those living in the mid-1950s had just gone through.
1945, the war over. After 4 years of unparalleled war effort, denial, sacrifice, the American public hungry for the rewards of peace.
We had just had a world war, and there was deaths, and no one wanted to remember the next death, which was in their backyard, and no one knew how to deal with it back then. So when this happened, who would ever think that someone would blow up a plane? And that changed the laws of the airport. The piece about Channel 7 at the time being the first ones into the courtroom.
Here's the story. KLZ had requested permission to broadcast and televise the trial. Permission was denied.
Months after the attack in 1956, Denver 7,
Good evening,
known as KLZ TV back then, was instrumental in bringing justice to the public eye.
We hit the air with a series of sharp editorials, got the Colorado Supreme Court to consider our case, and won a revision of Canon 35 of the Judicial Code of Ethics.
And we were able to broadcast black and white images of the trial to living rooms across Colorado. It's our mission to keep raising more awareness on this important piece of our state's history, not only to help bring Coloradans together to help build a permanent memorial, but because for so many Weld County citizens, there's healing to be found, being able to finally open up about the horrors that they saw and the emotional toll that took all these years later.
And I had no idea the impact that this one evil act had on my life, on my mother's life, and it was by the grace of God that I could forgive him because I didn't want to.
And what's really matters, and I've said this before, is that this story comes out before we lose this generation. And we pray for the people to have a long life, to be able to come and to see what their story is and the pain that they've gone through is for a purpose. Just watching Martha and Conrad Hops, who are at our board meetings, tell their story, it always comes out. Something always comes out that has not been told before.
Since Marion came out, he's healed.
Stories that the Meade Historical Society in Weld County wants to hear. Polly Driver-Smith, who has a close connection to the Flight 629 Memorial Committee, is president of the Meade Historical Society. She's working hard to capture these important oral histories.
I think telling the stories heals people. And so many of them just keep coming out of the woodwork and say, I was there. I saw the fireball in the sky as it blew up. I saw my dad was one of the security people.
Anyone with a connection to Flight 629's story is invited to participate so that they can preserve these untold stories, each deserving to be heard.
Why? Why did it happen?
like these I came across when researching for this report.
I can remember that night as though it were last week.
They're from a 1980s City of Longmont public access video where Weld County citizens opened up about what they saw that night.
We could see that there was a fire. I don't remember just exactly how we got down in that field, but I know we drove in. And one of the first sights I saw was a woman sitting in her chair from the airplane with her strap around her body, looking perfectly serene, but her legs were blown off.
Another witness shared a grim task carried out by her son.
They met the kids and they stacked up a bunch of blankets on each kid's arm and said, "Go that way and cover up every body you find." And he said to me, "Mom, I hope I never see anything like this again."
Nearly 70 Novembers had passed, 70 years of repressed trauma, untold sacrifice and pain felt by those whose lives were changed here. It's time to honor the 44, to give their families and first responders a place to reflect and heal, a place where anyone can come and learn about what happened to United Flight 629, to get to know the passengers and lift up the unsung heroes. And if you are touched and want to help, your gift will go a long way in making this memorial a reality. The hope is by the 70th commemoration on November 1st, 2025, a large gathering of families will, for the first time, come to Colorado and have a place to remember and reconnect to their loved ones. And over the next year, Denver 7 will introduce you to more people impacted by the Flight 629 story. More Coloradans working hard so that the 44 will not be forgotten. Reporting near Longmont, I'm Jeff Anastasio, Denver 7.